Hey guys, I'm going to show you today the push-up progressions that we read about this week, or at least my version of them. Wes, is it okay if we video this and show it to my PAT online class?
Yep.
So push-ups, I try to start those, especially if I'm working on upper body or core, as early as I can, which means it's working in conjunction usually with the diaphragmatic breathing, with the spinal stabilization that we worked on. Typically, I won't move to doing this until they can actually hold good spinal stabilization in quadruped while they're doing alternate arm and leg movements, just to make sure that they are able to stabilize their spine and get the correct position while they are doing these exercises. So the first progression I would use is actually having them do a push-up on the wall. So you're going to have them hands shoulder width apart, just like you would on the floor, feet shoulder width apart. Spine is going to remain neutral, that is cervical, spinal, thoracic, and lumbar. And just instruct them to lower themselves to the wall and back up again. Do that 4 more times for me. While they're doing this, it's very important to make sure again that all of the spine is staying neutral, that they're using good breathing and good bracing techniques so that they don't put any pressure on that lumbar spine or their shoulders. For the assessment on Wes, I'm actually going to repost the assessment that I did with him last block. Back this way for me. That I did with him last block, so that you can see all of his Jhana movement patterns, because I typically use the push-up and that shoulder abduction test before I start these. From here, the next progression would actually be on a treatment table, which changes that center of gravity, that basic support. Again, you're going to look for that neutral head, neutral spine, good ab bracing and breathing patterns. We'll do that again 5 times. And to progress from here, again, you're going to have to make sure that they maintain all that. We're not having any kind of issues while they're doing this motion. Typically from the table, I take them to the ground in a kneeling push-up instead of a full leg push-up. Come on, just a little more for me. Go. Okay, and again, same instructions here. We're going to make sure that they're keeping a neutral head, neutral spine, keeping that bracing really good. Go all the way down to the ground and back up again. From that kneeling position, I usually take them out to a full push-up position. However, I'm going to make sure before we go to that full push-up position that they have moved through that spinal stabilization patterns that we talked about last week, because I'll go from quadruped to a plank position. If they can hold that position and have good spine stabilization, good core stabilization in that form, then we'll move to the full body push-up. Okay. Again, make sure, go ahead and do your 5. Make sure again, neutral head, good spine stabilization. Make sure that that low back is not arching or rounding up when they do this, that they're not struggling with this motion. Okay, thank you. From that full push-up, you can change their hand placement depending on if you're trying to target a different muscle. If you just want to change that basic support, they can do wide hands, do diamond push-ups. And I read an article this week. I'll try to find it and reference it for y'all again. They actually talked about doing staggered hand push-ups to target some other things. To change their basic support a lot, once I get them in that motion, we'll usually start with a Vasi ball and have them get back in a push-up position. Hands on the ball. Again, same instructions, neutral head, neutral spine, keep that core tight, and have them do the motion on that. You can also progress the kneeling push-up in this manner as well if you would like to do that before you move to the full push-up to make sure they have good control. After this, another option is to use suspended push-ups. A lot of these are used, especially if you're doing core stuff, because it actually works to activate your core a little more. You get here. Again, make sure they're comfortable. You may have to start them out at a higher angle, especially if they're not comfortable in this position and they're afraid of falling over. But let's do 5 in this. And again, same cues for all of this, same key points. Looking at that head, looking at the spine, making sure they are not arching their back in any way so that they're keeping pressure off that lumbar spine. One of the final progressions that I moved to is using a full Bossy Ball. This one is generally really hard, even for athletes that do have a strong core, because it moves so much, but it's great working on that stabilization, working to give that sensory motor system some new signals to try to accommodate to you. Again, watch, see now he's shrugging his shoulders, so for him you would have to remind him to pull those shoulders down, keep that spine neutral, and watch that low back while he does these. Thank you. Those are generally all that's the progressions I use. I do use the Bossy Ball and kneeling, and the Swiss Ball and kneeling sometimes if they can't get good core control with a full push-up position. I'll use those before we actually move to doing the full push-up. But like I said, that's pretty much what I do, what I use based on the athlete and what I'm looking for. Any tips, tricks that y'all have, any alterations, I would be glad to hear them, and thank you so much for watching this.